In the last two lessons, we have studied the prophesied one world government and the prophesied one world religion. In this lesson, we will learn about the enforcement mechanism that will be used by the Antichrist and the false prophet to impose their will upon the people of the world. The world government will use economic control to force people to give their allegiance to the Antichrist. The prophecy is found in Revelation 13, verses 16 through 18.
And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand, or on their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666.
The astounding thing about this amazing prophecy is that it was given 2,000 years ago, but could only possibly be fulfilled in the time in which we presently live. The prophecy portrays a time when every person will be required to have a number without which they will not be able to buy or sell. This kind of program could only be implemented during the day of the computer and the internet. This passage seems to paint a picture of a cashless society where all transactions will be conducted electronically. We are moving very rapidly towards such a cashless society right now. Let's talk about China's social credit score. China has developed what it calls a social credit score system. Under this system, each individual is given a social credit score according to his or her behavior. If a person jaywalks, their credit score goes down. If they sit in a handicapped seat when they are not handicapped, points are deducted from their credit score. If they make negative comments about the Chinese government on social media, it affects their credit score dramatically. Every single action in a person's life will impact their social credit score one way or the other. If their score is too low, they may not be allowed to purchase airline tickets or passage on one of China's high-speed trains. Every person's records through life will be entered into their credit score record. This will include their grades in school and college, their payment record of their bills, and virtually every aspect of their life. One person was preparing to board a flight when she was stopped at the airport checkpoint. The airport computer screen stated that she had been found guilty of defaming her boyfriend's ex-lover and had failed to apologize. She was not allowed to board the flight until she apologized. Then the ban was lifted. The Chinese government contends this social credit score is simply designed to teach its people to be good, upstanding citizens. However, at its core, the system is a tool to control individuals, companies, and other entities' behavior, and to make sure they conform with the policies, directions, and will of the Communist Party of China. China's social credit score system combines big data, analytic techniques, with pervasive data collection to compile records on every citizen. At the heart of this social credit score are millions of video cameras that line the streets and alleys of China. All are networked into vast stores of personal data sifted by increasingly advanced data mining software. China has around 600 million cameras deployed all over the country. This amounts to approximately one camera for every 2 people. Due to China's advanced facial recognition software, each person can be monitored on an ongoing basis and his or her credit score displayed for the authorities to see. This allows the government to exercise stifling control over the Chinese people. The interlocking Chinese computer system maintains extensive information on all citizens, including their bank cards, their payment accounts, phone numbers, identity cards, and even their facial IDs. In a recent year, 23 million people were discredited and barred from traveling by air or rail, all due to poor social credit scores. What is even more alarming is the fact that China is finding markets abroad for its social credit score system. Many nations are purchasing the system from China to allow them to track political dissidents. China also extends the influence of its credit score system by imposing it upon the many companies that seek to do business in China. India, the world's second largest nation, has developed what they call the Aadhaar system. Aadhaar, which means foundation in Hindi, centers around a 12-digit identity number linked to fingerprints and iris scans. Each user receives a card with his or her ID number on it, which can be cross-referenced with the biometric data held in a database. Citizens are required to provide their Aadhaar card to receive welfare payments and other social services. The idea behind Aadhaar was to create a centralized system for the whole of India to be reliant on one form of recognizable ID rather than the old decentralized system of birth certificates and ration cards, which were vulnerable to loss or damage and which left marginalized people, particularly the rural poor, struggling to obtain state services. This is the world's largest biometric ID system. When the Aadhaar program launched in 2009, India set out to achieve a world first, giving every citizen a unique, biometrically verifiable identification number. Those biometrics, iris scans, and fingerprint records would be linked to a person's Aadhaar number, which would in turn be used in all interactions with the state, weeding out fraud, making taxation more efficient, and ultimately saving money, the government said. Let's talk about the negative impact this has had in India. As the Aadhaar system developed, it imposed itself increasingly onto citizens' private lives. It became nearly impossible in India to buy a cell phone contract or open a bank account, for example, without providing an Aadhaar number. On September 26, 2018, India's Supreme Court said Aadhaar could continue to be used by the state, but that private companies could no longer require users to provide their Aadhaar details as a condition of service. Does India's ID system work? Broadly, yes. The technology behind the system works for the majority of Indians. Aadhaar has so far saved the Indian government as much as $12.4 billion, according to an official from the Unique Identification Authority of India, which administers the program. What does this mean for the rest of the world? In some ways, this particular form of centralized identification system is unique to India, which has long struggled to ensure its massive and diverse populations is treated equitably by the central state. But other countries have flirted with the idea of similar systems as biometric technology has become cheaper and more widespread. Countries routinely integrate fingerprints and iris scans into passports, but none has tried as hard as India to make it the basis of citizen-state interaction. That might change in the future. India's Supreme Court ruling indicates that for democracies at least, integrating state ID systems with the market is always likely to spark privacy and data security concerns, which in turn may lead ID systems to be curtailed by privacy laws. More authoritarian states like China, however, will not have to overcome such a barrier. The question raised by the Aadhaar debate do not only belong to India. They are global questions concerning identity, data, and the rights of individuals, corporations, and governments. There's a worldwide push to kill cash. Reports about coordination of governments and tech companies to create a one-world cashless society are often viewed as little more than silly conspiracy theories. After all, cash is still king in daily life, even in extremely high-tech, innovative societies like Japan. Upon closer examination, though, current realities like proposed cash transaction bans, the continuing removal of higher denomination bills from several world economies, and the creation of centralized state cryptocurrencies by governments worldwide cannot be ignored. These trends signal a global push to kill paper money in the name of safety, security, and financial inclusion. Let's look at Australia. Australia's Liberal Party government has announced it will soon be illegal to purchase anything over $10,000, $7,500 in US dollars, with cash. The government says it's encouraging the transition to a digital society and cracking down on tax evasion. India is also moving toward a cashless society. In 2016, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced the devastating surprise removal of 86% of the country's circulating paper cash. Modi's shock move put the dominantly cash-based society in a panic, forcing people to take their now worthless 1,500 rupee notes to banks within 50 days of the announcement to exchange them for smaller denominations. Long lines of people wait to exchange their obsolete rupee notes in India. Modi said, "I want to tell my small merchant brothers and sisters, this is the chance for you to enter the digital world." Now, the Royal Bank of India is moving to ban all cryptocurrencies but one, the state-approved digital rupee. Even the United States is moving toward a cashless system. In the United States, $500 Federal Reserve notes were officially discontinued in 1969. More recently, there has been a campaign to discontinue the $100 bill. Now banks must file a SARS report with the government on anyone depositing or withdrawing more than $5,000 cash. SARS stands for Suspicious Activity Report. In Europe, the European Central Bank stopped production of the 500 euro note at the end of 2018. In Israel, the following article appeared in Israel National News on January the 2nd of 2019, titled, "Law Restricting Use of Cash Goes into Effect." Israeli law limiting use of cash for purchases and payment of wages goes into effect. Violators could face up to 3 years in jail. Officially titled the Law to Reduce the Use of Cash, The measure was passed in the Knesset in March of 2018, but only went into effect with the start of the new year of 2019. Based on Israel Tax Authority estimates, about 1/5 of economic activity in Israel is unreported. That is the shadow economy, a 2014 report claimed. The world is preparing for the mark of the beast. Let's talk for a moment about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. What are the Sustainable Development Goals? On September 25th of 2015, all 193 member states of the United Nations, including the United States, unanimously adopted the Sustainable Development Goals. The goals created a 15-year blueprint for leading the world into a socialist one-world government. The UN is driving towards a global ID. In May 2016, at the United Nations headquarters in New York, the inaugural ID 2020 Summit brought together over 400 people to discuss how to provide a unique digital identity to everyone on the planet, including the 1.5 billion people presently living without any form of recognized identification. Some of the companies in attendance were Bloomberg, Brigham Young University, Cisco Systems, Cornell University, Ernst & Young, Forbes, Google, IBM, JP Morgan, Microsoft, and NASDAQ. Here are the results of the ID 2020 meeting. The two main outcomes from the meeting were: one, widespread consensus among ID 2020 attendees that identity is both a fundamental human right and a necessary prerequisite for the success of the Sustainable Development Goals. And two, sweeping commitments from the conference attendees to contribute towards the shared goal of universal digital identity. The global planners believe a universal digital identity is absolutely necessary for reaching their goal of a global government by 2030. The World Economic Forum is held in Davos, Switzerland each year. It is held each January and focuses its discussions on what the future course of the world should be. At the January 2018 meeting, the discussions focused on the emergence of 5G technology and the need of establishing a global ID for every person on Earth. The following conclusions were issued by the 2018 forum under the title, How 5G Will Change the World. 4G stands for fourth generation internet speeds. The world has been running on 4G technology for the last 10 years. The transition to 5G technology is expected to begin during 2019. 5G internet speeds will be from 10 times to 100 times as fast as the speeds available under 4G. The shift to 5G will be as revolutionary as electricity or the invention of the automobile, benefiting entire economies and entire societies. It will enable the tracking of everything on Earth, including every person. This is called the Internet of Things, abbreviated IoT. Attending Davos in 2018 were 2,500 global movers and shakers. The 340 political leaders present included Donald Trump, U.S. President, Angela Merkel, Chancellor of Germany, Theresa May, UK Prime Minister, Emmanuel Macron, President of France, Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, Narendra Modi, Prime Minister of India, Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations. The plan is for the internet to cover the entire world. In addition to discussing the shift from 4G to 5G technology, plans were also discussed at Davos to provide internet signals to the entire world. Plans were laid to launch 12,000 satellites that will cover the entire Earth. This will allow for a global ID for every person on the planet and for tracking everyone. How soon could the mark of the beast be implemented? The world's two largest countries are implementing pervasive systems of control. As we have previously described, China's social credit score tracks all of her 1.4 billion people. With its extensive use of cameras, databases, and face recognition technology, China could immediately implement the mark of the beast. India, with its 1.38 billion population, has given identification cards to almost 100% of its citizens. This has created a system that could easily be used to implement the mark of the beast. Between China and India, these two nations alone control 2.8 billion people, approximately 1/3 of the world's population. Let's talk about national ID cards. Almost every nation on earth now assigns its citizens national ID cards in one form or another. The national IDs of over 100 of the nations are compulsory. The world is moving into digital banking. Almost all banks are promoting cashless and checkless banking. Few people still get a physical paycheck each week. Almost all wages are paid by direct deposit. Bank of America CEO Brian Moynihan says his company wants a cashless society. He explained that the Bank of America spends $5 billion annually for checks and cash to move around the company. How about Sweden? The country of Sweden has 1,600 banks. 900 of them have no cash. You cannot deposit cash there, nor can you withdraw cash. A vast majority of businesses in Sweden no longer accept cash. The same trend is advancing rapidly throughout Europe. The coming world government will be a cashless society. As we learned in a previous lesson, there's going to be a system of world government in the end times. Economic control will be used to force allegiance to this world government. This coming system of economic control is described in Revelation 13, 16, 18. Let's look at the prophecy once again.
And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand, or on their foreheads. And that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666.
If all buying and selling is done by use of a number, as this scripture describes, it is easy to see how people could be excluded from the economic system if they refused to take a number and to pledge allegiance to the one world government. At one time or another, all of us have swiped our credit card only to see the message displayed, authorization failed. A mere notation in a database can cause our number to be invalidated. During the reign of the Antichrist, all who have not pledged their allegiance to the Antichrist and his world government will have their number nullified. To some, this may seem far-fetched, but to people in China and India, this prospect is all too real. Verse 17 tells us, the mark of the beast will be the name of the beast or the number of his name. Verse 18 tells us the number of the beast is the number of a man. It also discloses that his number is 666. Verse 18 says, let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast. The mark of the beast will not be 666 tattooed on your forehead. Somehow, we will be able to count or calculate the number of the beast, and it will equal 666. How could this possibly be? How could we calculate the number of the name of the beast? Though I do not believe this is the answer, let me give an example of how this could be done. The name inscribed in the crown of the Pope is Vicarius Filii Dei. This is Latin for Vicar of the Son of God. If we add up all of the letters in Vicarius Filii Dei that have Roman numeral value, here's what we would get. V equals 5, I equals 1, C equals 100, I equals 1, U is inscribed as a V, so that equals 5, I equals 1, L equals 50, I equals 1, I equals 1, D equals 500, I equals 1. These numbers total 666. We know the Pope is not going to be the Antichrist. So this illustration is simply an example of how we might end up counting the name of the beast. As we can see in the above illustration, the Antichrist name will calculate to 666. Taking the mark of the beast results in eternal damnation. The scriptures teach us that a person worshiping the Antichrist and taking the mark of the beast will result in the severest of all consequences. Revelation 14:9 through 11 describes this in horrific detail.
And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, If any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation, and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels, and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascendeth up for ever and ever, and they have no rest day nor night, who worship the beast and his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name.
Those who refuse to worship the Antichrist and to take his mark will be economically sanctioned or even killed. Yet, they will receive the wonderful reward of eternal life. Those who do take his mark will meet the most horrible destiny. They will receive the wrath of God and will be tormented with fire and brimstone forever and ever. This fate should be avoided at all costs. How will the mark of the beast be administered? Presently, the favorite form of national ID is a national ID card, usually containing a person's photograph and biometric identification. However, cards can be lost, stolen, or counterfeited. A means of ID that has been experimented with is the implanting of a computer chip about the size of a grain of rice under the skin. This can be scanned to pay bills, to open doors, and to serve as a certain means of identification. 4,000 people in Sweden have already been implanted with such a chip and are using it on an ongoing basis. The scripture says the mark of the beast will be in a person's hand or forehead. The favorite form of biometric identification today is fingerprints or eye scans. This is frighteningly close to what the prophecy describes, since your fingerprints are on your hand and your eyes are in your forehead. There are other means of ID that have recently been experimented with. Digital tattoos and facial recognition using blockchain technology are among the latest methods to be proposed. A few nations will not receive the mark of the beast. Most of the world will end up controlled by the Antichrist and his one world government. This means they will ultimately accept his damnable mark of the beast. However, the Bible reveals that at least 3 nations will not come under the control of the Antichrist and will consequently not be brought under the curse of the mark of the beast. One of those countries is Jordan. The country of Jordan will never fall under the control of the Antichrist. The prophecy is found in Daniel 11:41.
He shall enter also into the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown. But these shall escape out of his hand, even Edom and Moab, and the chief of the children of Ammon.
Edom is located in southern Jordan and is commonly referred to as Petra today. The Moab Mountains are in central Jordan and are still called by that name. Ammon is another form of Ammon. Ammon is the capital of the nation of Jordan. Daniel 11:41 is clearly speaking of the Antichrist and declares that Edom, Moab, and Ammon shall escape out of his hand. A prophecy about Israel is found in Revelation 12:1-2.
And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth, and pained to be delivered.
The woman in this passage is Israel. The 12 stars around her head symbolize the 12 tribes of Israel. This same symbolism was used in Genesis chapter 37, verse 9, to represent the nation of Israel. The woman is depicted as travailing to have a child. The child of the prophecy is the Messiah. The nation of Israel gave birth to the Messiah, Jesus Christ. Later in the chapter, Satan and his agent, the Antichrist, is shown persecuting the woman Israel. But Revelation 12:14 tells us Israel will be protected from the Antichrist.
And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for a time, and times, and half a time, from the face of the serpent.
This prophecy describes events that will occur in the final 3.5 years called the Great Tribulation. When the woman Israel is persecuted, she will be helped by the 2 wings of a great eagle. The eagle in the Bible is the symbol used to depict the United States of America, since it is the official emblem of the U.S. Even though this passage was written over 2,000 years ago, it foretells the United States protecting Israel in the end times. We are watching this prophecy come to pass right before our eyes. Who is Israel's best friend today? The United States. Who recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital? The United States. Who was the first nation to move its embassy to Jerusalem? The United States. This prophecy clearly depicts the U.S. protecting Israel from the Antichrist and his one world government. In recent times, the U.S. has pulled out of many world government structures and has reasserted its sovereignty. If the U.S. is going to protect Israel from the Antichrist and his world government, then it is obvious that America is not going to be a part of the world government. It then follows that the United States will not be requiring our citizens to pledge allegiance to the Antichrist and his one world government? Or will we require our citizens to take the mark of the beast in order to buy or sell? We can see from these different prophecies that Jordan, Israel, and the United States will not be a part of the end-time one world government, nor will the mark of the beast be imposed upon our nations. There may be other nations that resist the mark of the beast as well, but these are the three the Bible specifically mentions. Now let's look at the real purpose of the mark of the beast. Revelation 13:2 states that the dragon, Satan, will give the world government its power and authority. The driving force behind the world government, the world religion, and the mark of the beast will be Satan himself. His entire plan will be focused on forcing every person on earth to worship him, to pledge allegiance to the end-time world government, and to take the mark of the beast will be to worship Satan himself. In our next lesson, we will study the fascinating story of the two simultaneous harvests. You won't want to miss it.